All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Troy Schinkel. I'm a Survivors Speak outreach member with Jane Don't Know More. I'm going to be talking to another male survivor with Jane Don't Know More. And we're going to be talking about our experiences. So joining me today is Vinnie. Vinnie, thanks a lot for being here. Um,
I'm glad to be here.
so why don't we start off just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name's Vinnie Goad. I'm also a Survivor Outreach member. I've been a member since 2014. I enjoy working with anything mechanical. Woodworking has been a big passion of mine, and it's a form of therapy for me. Uh, to me, it's rewarding to take something that looks like junk and make it into something useful. And I, my friends and family are very important to me, and I try to be there for them as much as I can. And if anybody needs help, I'm always there. How about yourself, Troy?
I'm a self-proclaimed freelance educator. So, you probably heard of freelance writers. Well, I'm a freelance educator. So I pick up classes all around Connecticut. For the most part, I teach at Central Connecticut. And this semester, I'm teaching at Central. I'm teaching at Tunxus. I'm teaching at Middlesex Community College. So I've got a pretty full load. I've got 4 classes, 3 schools, 2 classes on, yeah, 3 classes on ground, and one online. So it's pretty maddening. Um, so I teach geological sciences, and that really anything earth science, environmental science, meteorology, you name it, anything in that kind of category, I teach about. Um, uh, so I'm married. I've got 4 kids, and as you know, Vinny, I've got a set of triplets.
Yep.
Yeah. So triplet boys. My boys are 3.5. My daughter's 5.5. So life is pretty crazy in my house. And tomorrow, my daughter starts kindergarten, and my boys are going to their preschool orientation. So it's going to be a pretty busy day tomorrow.
That sounds awesome.
And the semester starts back up on Thursday, so I'll be back at it on Thursday. So crazy, crazy time of year. So Vinny, can you tell us a little bit about your survivor story?
Yeah, of course. Um, for me, it all started in catechism when I was 14 years old. We got a new teacher, and he introduced himself with his name and contact information on the board. And he said, I'll be here for you guys, not as a teacher, but as a friend. And I was writing down his info and thinking to myself that I could talk to him about my parents because at the time they were going through a divorce, and I didn't know who I could talk to that would understand the problems I was having. So after a few days of thinking about it, I decided to contact him, and we started emailing each other. And I felt that he was a well-known person in the community and could be easily trusted. Uh, he was a figure of authority, a CCD teacher, and as we kept talking, I shared things with him about my concerns with my parents, and he started to see that I was vulnerable. He offered me some easy landscaping jobs at his condo. After my parents agreed to it, then I started working. I thought he was cool because he let me smoke pot, and one day he gave me some alcohol. And later that day, I had a few drinks, and he made me go to his room. Um, I didn't want to, but he forced his way and made me. Uh, then I became a victim. I didn't know what to think. What if someone found out? I felt like my whole world just crashed down and I was helpless. I had no idea who I could trust. He kept buying me things just to try to keep me around. This went on for about a year, and I never told anyone because I was so embarrassed and ashamed of it. He had a way of manipulating people and almost brainwashing you to make it seem normal. And this was called grooming. He had a way with words, and that's something that a lot of offenders use to get their victims. Dave was a repeat offender. I only know now because one of his victims from 20 years prior had gotten cancer at the time, and he didn't care what people thought anymore. His name was Ray, and he hired a private investigator to see what Dave was up to, and to his surprise, he was still doing it. He brought this to one of his friends that was a cop, and I actually knew him because he was my cycling coach at the time. Um, he ended up calling my father and wanted to talk down at the station. And little did I know that Ray was going to be there. I I denied everything because I was too embarrassed to even admit it. Ray and I talked alone, and he told me his story. After that, he said, I could tell just by the look on your face that he did it to you too. And that's when I said it for the first time. And it felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I felt great about telling it, and I wanted to report it that night. And after reporting it that week, 8 other victims came forward from the same person. And all it took was one person to come forward and say something. I've accepted the fact that I am a survivor. I went through this and I came out the better man. All I want to do is change one person's life the way that someone changed mine and got me out of the mess that I was in. Sexual abuse is one of the most unspoken of things. With Jane Doe No More, it's easy because you don't have to worry about what other people think about you because everybody accepts and embraces you. And we're just a big family. Um, I was nervous when I went there for the first time, but the second time I went there, I shared my story and it felt great. It feels like telling a whole group of people that experience the same things and know exactly what you feel. And the first step was the hardest, but it's also the most rewarding, especially when you have a support group like Jane Doe No More.
Definitely. I'm glad you brought up the word grooming, because as I was listening to your story, I was like just clicking in my head, grooming, grooming, grooming. Um, yeah, he just gave you all this stuff and made you feel secure, and then they turn the tables on you. So,
Yeah.
um, I have a similar story, except mine was with a peer. So I had a peer that basically, this happened when I was 12 years old, so I was a little younger than you, but the other boy was 12 as well, and he did a whole lot of manipulation and grooming, just like you did, um, and it started out when we were having a sleepover, and he brought over some Playboy magazines, and he came up with these rules, and he just made them up in his head. And it was, oh, if you get a hard on and you're looking at these magazines with your friends, well, you got to help each other out. And he just said things like this, and at first I was like, what? And uh at the time, I was in a vulnerable state, just like you. I growing up, I didn't really have a lot of close friends, and you know this other kid was my friend. And I I almost got this belief that, oh, is this what friends do? So you go down the path, and and again, like years went on for maybe a year. I don't know exactly how long mine went on for. It wasn't once, it wasn't twice. I know it was months, maybe it was a year. um, but you just keep going, and you almost like block it out, like deny it. um, this isn't happening. I don't know what's happening. Um, and it just takes something to snap you out of it, you know like for you going down to the police station. For me, I was, in my opinion, lucky. He decided to end it. He just decided not to be my friend anymore. Friend. Um, and that was such a weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I didn't fully understand it, being 12, 13 years old. um you know that tells you something, that your friend doesn't want to be friends with you anymore, and that is a weight off your shoulders, like, whew. So yeah, and I didn't tell anybody. I mean, maybe in the last 25 years or so, I told like a few people. um I confided in people here and there, a handful of people maybe. And then eventually, did you ever see the show, 13 Reasons Why?
I have not, no.
Yeah, so good show. It's kind of a big hit on Netflix, a couple years ago. So I was watching, like a behind the scenes, and they kind of talked about this, 1in6.org. Have you heard of that website?
No.
So great website. 1in6.org is, so it stands for 1 in 6 males are sexually abused before the time they turn 18. Um, and so they just mentioned it. The show tended to deal with some very, um, you know, difficult topics, and one of them was sex abuse, and even male sex abuse they touched on. And so I went to that 1in6.org and I started reading it, and I'm like, okay, that's what made me realize that I had been a victim. It took me 25 years to realize.
Mm,
Um,
Isn't
this
it?
whole,
It's just mind blowing
yeah,
to because everything is so surreal and you don't actually know what's happening and
hmm,
if it's right or wrong
right.
or anything.
I think that's a big thing. Is it right or wrong? And you don't know at the time. You don't
And
know that it's wrong.
who you talk to at that age that will understand or even them know if it's right or wrong at
Yeah.
that age.
Yeah, you can't talk to a peer about it and say, "Hey, this is happening to me. Is it happening to you?" You just for some reason, to just tune it out, and you in the back of your mind, it's bad, but you're so young. You were 14, I was 12, like you don't really fully understand what's going on. Um so, yeah, and then I like you I started to see, I eventually got to Jane Doe No More, but I went to therapy and, started talking about it and just getting everything out. And, it certainly starts cracking open the shell, and eventually got, connected with Jane Doe No More. And when I first joined, like, I'm never going to talk. I'm never going to tell my story, like never going to do this. And now here I am just a couple years later, like, I'm like, just give me a megaphone, because I realized I'm not alone. As you were saying, like, I'm not alone. When I have my Jane Doe No More crew, it's just, you don't have to worry. Everybody's got a different experience, but you've all been through the same thing. So it's that, like you were saying, um, that great camaraderie. Unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons, but hey, at least we have a support group.
Yeah. No,
Um,
it helps so much just to have somebody there when sometimes when the things come up and you don't know who else to talk to
mhm.
and they're always there
Yep.
no matter
Yeah.
what.
Yep. It's the saying, "You're never alone." This group fully grasps what we've been through, so it's been great. Um, so now, what made you decide to, actually speak out, like, kind of seek out Jane Doe More, and what made you decide to tell your story and to keep telling your story?
Well, the first time that I was introduced to anyone from Jane Doe No More, Ray Mashad got an award. He got the Out of the Shadows award, and he invited me to go. And he introduced himself and told his story, and then proceeded to introduce me to everybody and said, "This is the person that put him away."
Wow. And
And
how did that, did that completely catch you off guard?
I got up there and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I was probably just like, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and,
Wow.
and after that, I wanted to raise awareness because it's one of the most unspoken of topics that just gets brushed under the rug. And there's too many stories of people that didn't know what to do, or if they should say anything, or even if anyone would believe them, especially as a male. And i I just think we need to change that. um, I didn't think I'd ever speak out about it, but it was Ray that gave me the courage, because he told me his story, and that gave me the strength to speak up.
Yeah. I think for me, feeling alone for 25 years and thinking, and I'm sure you feel the same way. A lot of people feel this, a lot of survivors feel this way, that it was my fault. I let it happen. And that persistent thinking, like, for a long time, I, you have these feelings like, am I gay? Why did I do this? Why did I go through with this experience? And you just realize, like, I was a kid. I was 12 years old, and no one at that age, male, female, male, male, whatever, it doesn't matter. You should not be engaging in sexual activity at that age. You can't understand it. It's not. So just that feeling alone for so long, and then meeting Jane Doe No More people, and then realizing, like, I would love to talk to my 13-year-old self or 14-year-old self or 15, 16, 17, and say to them, you're not alone. And then, instead of having them be silent for 25 years, have them be comfortable with themselves now. So that's for me. That's why I wanted to start speaking. And honestly, once I spoke the first time, and once I got really involved with Jane Doe No More, it's just snowballed. I'll if as we know, my life is pretty chaotic, but if I could do it every night, I would. You know, just
No,
to get the word out.
for something that is so hard to do, it feels good doing it because you're making a difference. You're
Exactly.
talking about something that nobody else wants to talk about.
Hmm.
And that's what makes other people speak out and be like, you know what? I did that. I was through the same thing as you were. And all it takes is one person. And I'm a very strong believer of that.
Definitely. Now, I'm trying to think back to your story now. Um, so you were at the police station, and I think you said your dad was there.
Yeah.
So now, how was it, you know, basically saying this to your dad?
So I I went in there and it was me, Brian, the police officer, and Ray. And he questioned me in front of my dad and Brian, and I denied it.
Yeah.
I was scared. I didn't want to say it. You know, I just I couldn't.
Yeah.
And then Ray told me his story, and just the way that it started. He started to hang out with him. He originally he went to a music shop and he wanted a harmonica, but he couldn't afford it. And Dave took him in the back and said, "Hey, I have a used one that you could have, and um, I'll teach you how to play it." And then ended up inviting him over his house to his pool. And it was all the same grooming process that
Mhm.
happened to me. And it really like put a red flag. And that's not supposed to happen. And after he was done, I couldn't even say still that it happened. And he just looked in my eyes and said, I know it happened to you too. And and after that, I could say that it
Right.
did happen. And it's just something that somebody else put the courage in my hands to come forward with it.
Hmm. Yeah. It's that frozen feeling, that, you know, y- speechless feeling. I get that. Um, I'm thinking about my own experience with my dad. I don't think I've actually had the conversation with my dad. I did tell my mom about, a couple years ago, and this is again 25 years, and I was backtracking to, sleepovers with my friends at the age of 12, and she was trying to remember like who, when did, um, so and of course when I told her everything, I said, you can tell dad, and if dad wants to talk to me, fine. I don't know if we ever did have the conversation. I think we've talked about it, but I've never actually told him the story like to his face, I guess. Um, but I've always had a challenge. It's always been a challenge talking to like close friends and family about it. And my in-laws, I've never had the conversation with them either. But probably, my first talk that I did with Jane Doe No More was recorded, and then I posted it on social media. So I know a lot of my family and friends have seen it, and they know the story, but to actually have the conversation with them, I haven't had it. Um, and if somebody wants to approach me and talk to me about it, I'm okay with that. But it's almost like I don't want to talk about it. It's not, it is embarrassing. I would certainly rather talk to strangers about it. Um, Also, me being an educator, I think helps talking in front of people. I don't want to talk in front of my friends and family. I want to talk to you know other people. I don't know. That's just the way it is for me. But certainly very challenging talking to family and friends about it. Um, so, do you have any tips? Let's say there's some other guys out there that are watching this and they've had some experiences. Like what, maybe it was 10 years ago, a year ago. Um, what kind of advice do you give them?
um I know it sounds easier said than done, but for me, I just feel like it's okay to tell people about it, and you don't have to be scared. um as men, it affects us a little bit differently because most men think that admitting to something like this would impede on their masculinity.
Hmm.
um but it doesn't. To me, it makes you stronger as a person and as a man because you're not afraid to admit that you were sexually abused. And um, to say it in a room full of strangers is hard, but the courage and the guts that it takes to not be afraid is really empowering. And I'm not afraid to tell people. It makes me stronger every time that I tell anybody. And I'm sure you can admit the same thing. It only gets easier after the first time.
Yep. For me, it's like we were talking about this immense weight off the shoulders, and it's an incredible confidence booster, believe it or not. Being able to talk about this stuff, like you're saying, it is an incredible um, confidence booster. I don't care what people think about me anymore, you know, and I still see people around me like they care about what people think of them, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm gonna be me, and I get that mentality. If you don't like it, I don't care. You can go. And sometimes that happens. I know people who have had experiences, being survivors, and they tell someone and they don't get a great response. And so you have to be aware of that can happen. For me, if you can't handle it, sorry, I'm going to keep going on with my life, you know? So do you know, I mentioned 1in6.org as a great resource, especially for males. Do you have any resources that you recommend for anybody?
I mean, for me, uh, the biggest help that I had was Jane Doe No More, and
Mhm.
and the whole Jane Doe No More family that we have. And I was I was ready to tell them, and they made me feel that it was okay. I I do a lot of self therapy, if
Mhm.
you will. Like I mentioned, woodworking for me is a great outlet. As far as resources, I think that's probably the only one that I would have.
Mhm. Now, did you ever um, either in the past or currently get into actual therapy, going and talking to somebody and doing that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I did that right after I went to the police, and I did therapy for a little while. Um, but that didn't help me at that point in time because I wasn't ready.
Right.
You
Mhm.
know, when I went through with the program at Jane Doe No More, I was ready,
Yep.
and that makes the biggest difference. Uh,
Hmm.
a lot of people say you can't help them if they don't want the help.
Right.
And that point in time, I just wasn't ready, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I can relate to that. Like I said, it took me 25 years to, really sort of come out about my experiences. And, I think partly it had to do with having my own kids, and it's not like, boom, you have a kid and you start thinking about this stuff. It's for some reason, it's like a trigger, having your own kids, it triggers, something in your head. Um, and I don't know what it was, but it was certainly something underlying in there that drove me to kind of dive in and see what was going on. So yeah, having kids, it changes your world in so many different ways. I know you talked about your self therapy, your outlet, being woodworking. What kind of things do you make?
Um, I like making a lot of different things.
Mhm.
I made some tables. I like carving spoons is a good one that I just it helps me a lot because it gives me time to think about life, and the struggles and the gains, all the ups and the downs, and you know anything I'm feeling just gets let go when I start carving the wood. And you have to learn where you could take big cuts and where you have to be very gentle, just like life, when you make the big moves or when you have to take things one day at a time. And great things don't happen overnight. It takes a while of continuous hard work to get something and somewhere great. And that's like just slow and steady wins the race. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about, or do you sell any of your woodwork?
Um, I've thought about it. It's just kind of tough for me right now because I work a lot of hours and I start a lot of projects because I have this big ambition to do everything all at once. So, it's more of a wintertime thing, but I do plan on in the future uh, probably selling stuff.
Sounds good. So got some projects started and some not finished.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know how that goes. um, as you probably know, my outlet is kayaking. I'm a whitewater kayaker. I love it. I don't get out as much as I used to, but I got out the other day and ended up with 6 stitches in my finger. Flipped over, hit a big rock. I was, I had all my safety gear on, helmet, PFD, and so I hit my head, which wasn't a big deal. It hurt, but I was wearing the helmet, so no concussion. But I nailed my hand pretty good up against a rock, and with kayaking, we're on this river, and you can't just walk off and go to the hospital. So we went over to the side of the river, and you know um I'm always with other people. We stay safe and such. So we got to the side, the edge of the river, and us being fluent with whitewater kayak, and we all have to have med kits. So we all start breaking out our med kits, and we start bandaging up my hand, and we decided to use electrical tape. Works really good in water. It sticks to itself. And so then we decided to put a glove over my hand and then electrical tape that. We figured, some water is probably going to get in there, but that's at least better than sticking my hand in the water. If you
Yeah.
can imagine the water, in rivers and lakes and stuff, there's lots of stuff in there. So you don't want to get it in your cuts or in your mouth and stuff like that. So we did the best we could, and so I paddled the rest of the way. Um, I managed pretty okay, and then I had to go sit in the emergency room for a few hours and finally get all bandaged up and stitched up, and didn't get home till 11 o'clock. But hey, it's part of the risks. When you're out there kayaking, having fun, it happens. So
Yes.
still an outlet. Love it. I'll be back out there as soon as I can get my hand to grip a paddle again. So hopefully soon. So do you have any final advice? Anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to say to a person that hasn't been able to tell anyone yet, or hasn't gotten any therapy yet?
Yeah. Don't get discouraged by thinking what everybody else is going to think. Just like what you said, if you don't like it, there's the door. Um, but you're going to be surprised at how many people actually support you and value what you're speaking about. Um, don't doubt yourself. you know if you find the strength to tell someone, you're going to help other people by doing that.
Mhm.
For me, my goal was to help one person, like the one person that helped me. That changed my life. And all you have to do is tell your story, and other people are going to listen. It's so important because it's one of the most unspoken of things. And I just want to raise awareness.
Mhm.
It's something that people shouldn't have to keep covered up and beating themselves up about it, when you could have a group of great people that support you, and you do something good and feel good doing it.
Definitely. Like we've been saying a lot, it's telling people, you got to get over the hurdle of telling that first person. I think that's probably the hardest part, because that's also admitting to yourself, that something happened to you. Um, but yeah, telling people, because telling people, it's, think about your mind and your body like a bucket of filth, and every time you tell someone, you're getting rid of some of that filth. You're cleaning out that bucket that you've been carrying around for too long. um and we talked about therapy. You gotta sit down and talk with some people, and finding the right time, like you were saying, when you're ready to do it. um Telling people, talking to a therapist. We talked about 1in6.org, Jane Doe No More. um and every path to recovery here, it's not the same. you know you had therapy initially, and maybe it helped a little bit, but you weren't ready for it. But then later on in life, you had Jane Doe No More. Me, I waited 25 years. And so everybody's path is going to be different. Some people might be ready after a year, some people might take 10 years, whatever. um, there's also, you probably heard of the Take Back the Night, that sometimes the colleges do, and other organizations do. It, just encouraging people to go to those, and hearing other people's stories. And then, that's what helps people realize, like, I'm not alone. So maybe next time I tell my story, just the more exposure, the better, you know. Um, So I think we're gonna wrap it up, Vinny. I wanna thank you very much for joining me and for doing this. And I hope that you and I can really help bring awareness. And I hope people will get a chance to view this, and share it, and just let's get this out in the open.
I agree.
So again, thank you very much, Vinny. I appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.
Great. Have a good night, Troy.
All right, thanks. You too.